One semifinal is in the books, and the second is set to get underway in the 2003 Major League 5-pin bowling playoffs. The team of Terry Atwell, Shad Clisby, and Aaron Jaworski is through to the final, and now we focus our attention on the matchup between Team Wilson and Team Boorman. There are 3 bowlers on each team. Each individual head-to-head contest is worth 1 point, and the team total worth 2 points, so 5 points are available in each game. This semifinal match, like the last semifinal, consists of 2 games. The winner will be decided by the 2-game point total. So there you see it. Atwell team is through to the semifinals, or through to the final, I should say, and they're waiting to see who they will play for the ML5 championship. Team Wilson consists of Christy Wilson, a 2-time provincial singles champion, the captain Bob Wilson, who won 14 of his regular season matches. Bob with a career-high single of 425, and Bob's son Ken rounding out the team. Ken led the league with 26.5 points in the 40-game regular season. He averaged 239, and Ken Wilson will hope to lead his team by example here in the semifinal. Brad Ball will lead his team into battle against the Wilson squad. Brad Ball with a 21-3 regular season record, very impressive. Only appeared in 24 games, but won 21 of his 24 matches. Bill Boorman is the captain of this team, a season average of 226. He picked up 21.5 points during the regular season. Teddy Papadenitz of Brandon averaged 218 and won 8 of his regular season matches. And this Bill Boorman team actually has 4 members. The 4th member is Doug Buckman of Brandon. He averaged 209 in the regular season and compiled a record of 14-16. Of course, only 3 players competing at one time. 4 members on that Bill Boorman team, but only 3 playing at once, and it will be Doug Buckman sitting out to begin this 2-game semifinal match. Brad Ball leading it off for his team. And we don't see Brad miss the middle too often. He does miss on his first attempt here in the first frame. And his opponent is Christy Wilson. Christy also off the mark with her first delivery. Brad Ball tries to pick up the spare. Brad with a 79% hit percentage, which was #1 in the league during the regular season. So, as I mentioned, he does not miss the middle much, and he's back on the head pin second ball, and he picks up the spare. Christy Wilson, who had a high single of 322 in the regular season, unable to pick up her spare. As we look at Bill Boorman, captain. Like his partner Brad Ball, off the middle with his first delivery. Boorman's match against Bob Wilson. As Christy Wilson finishes up at first. She finds the middle there, and 15 count to start for Christy. Pops the head pin out. Look at Bob Wilson. 254 his high single during the regular season. He averaged 201. And a good start for Bob Wilson, getting his team on the board with a strike. Set for 12. First frame, so the advantage for Bob Wilson in that match against Bill Boorman. We now move to the number 3 bowlers, the anchor bowlers. Here's Ken Wilson. Nice ball for him there to start things off. He leaves that left corner standing. So that was his hit percentage. He was second in hit percentage during the regular season. Behind Brad Ball. Steady pop. Strikes in frame number 1. He's 69% on his left corner attempts. And he's off the mark here. So strikes for Bob Wilson, Ted Papadenitz in the first frame. Brad Ball and Christy Wilson now as we move back to the top of the lineup. Team Wilson and Team Boorman, with the winner moving on to play Team Atwell in the championship final. And that's more like the Brad Ball stuff right there. Strike for Ball in frame number 2. Christy Wilson, after a 15 count at first, is on the move here, and she gets that left corner to topple over. Christy Wilson responds with a strike. Bill Boorman, for the second straight frame, is off the middle with his first ball. As Christy Wilson looks on, takes a little bit of the edge off with a strike in her second frame. Bob Wilson looking to make it back-to-back strikes, and not this time. And Bill Boorman fails to pick up the spare, so 2 straight open frames for him to start things off. Give Bob Wilson a count of 25 in his first frame, counting 10 on the strike. Bill Boorman gets his 15, stands at 27 through 2 frames. And Wilson misses there, so count of 10 for him in the second frame, 35 now through 2 frames. He has an 8-pin edge on Bill Boorman. Ted Papadenitz now working on a strike. He's right back on the middle, and he'll have to settle for a chop here. He made the early statement against Ken Wilson, and now a chance for Wilson to rebound, and he'll do just that. Ken Wilson on the board in the second frame with a strike. Takes advantage of his opportunity. And Papadenitz tries to keep the scoreboard black and put their mark, and he misses to the right there, so Papadenitz will open in the second frame. So, as with that 15 count, Papadenitz now at 42 through 2 frames, 114 to 95. The total pinfall. Christy Wilson and Ken Wilson both have strikes to work on as they head to the third, and Brad Ball also working on a strike. It's good. And make it 2 in a row for Brad Ball. Christy Wilson responded last time to Brad's strike. Can she do it again in the third? No, she's off mark there, so Brad Ball with an early end. Christy Wilson. Billy Boorman finds the middle after a couple of misses in the first 2 frames. Big strike there for Bill Boorman in his match against Bob Wilson. And Christy Wilson picks up the spare in 3. Bob Wilson goes to work in frame number 3 after seeing his opponent, Bill Boorman, strike. And a little thin on that one. He'll leave the right corner standing. Minutes he struck in frame number 1, opened in 2nd. Good looking ball there from Poppin. It's another strike in frame number 3. When Ted is on, he looks awfully good, and he looked awfully good there with his 2nd strike in 3 frames. Bob Wilson picks up the spare in frame number 3. So a good frame there for the Bill Boorman team. Strikes all around for Boorman, Brad Ball, and Ted Poppinitz. Christy Wilson and Bob Wilson have spares in the 3rd, and Ken Wilson now looking to make it back-to-back strikes, and he will. Ken Wilson with a strike, so everybody had a mark in that frame on both sides. See the 3 strikes for the Bill Boorman team, a strike and a couple of spares on the other side for Ken Wilson. Christy Wilson now working on that spare. And a strike for her in frame number 4, her 2nd of the game. She makes the spare count. Gives her 75 through 3 frames. Her match against the always tough Brad Ball. He lost 3 of his 24 matches during the regular season. Right corner stand. So a good count for him after back-to-back strikes in frames 2 and 3. And skinny on that corner attempt, but he picks it up and marks for Brad Ball in all 4 frames. Bob Wilson now catches a piece of the middle there. And Bill Boorman. 4 and 3. Another strike in 4 for Bill Boorman. Sometimes that first strike gets the monkey off your back and can lead to good things. And Bill Boorman looks like he has the monkey off his back after opening in the first 2 frames. Momentum is such a big thing in the game of bowling, as it is in many sports. Once you get a few strikes going, you can really put the pressure on, and the points start adding up quickly. So Bill Boorman on the right track. Ted Poppinitz, the anchor bowler for his team in this first game. Pops the head pin out in frame number 4. Speaking of momentum, Ken Wilson with 2 strikes in a row as he goes to work in frame number 4. Another good looking ball from Ken, and it's 3 strikes in a row for Ken Wilson. Ken setting the pace early. First game of this 2-game semifinal, and leading his team by example. Poppinitz throws that one through the hole. After the strike in 3. He will settle for 10 in the 4th. Leaves him with a count of 72 heading to frame number 5. Ken Wilson well out in front of Ted Poppinitz in that anchor match. Bill Boorman, after a couple of open frames, has recovered with strikes in 3 and 4 in his match against Bob Wilson, Christy Wilson, and Brad Ball battling it out in that leadoff match. Ball working on a spare in the 5th. Off the mark there, punches out the 3, not the count he was looking for on the spare. That gives him 121 through 4, so still a very good start for Brad Ball. Christy Wilson working on a strike, and she picks up the spare in frame number 5, giving her 105 through 4 frames. 16 behind Brad Ball through 4. Brad Ball's going to open in 5, so that tightens that Ball-Wilson matchup, the Ball-Christy Wilson matchup a little bit. Ball will try to salvage something out of this 5th frame. And salvage 15 as a matter of fact. Bob Wilson has marks in 3 of his first 4 frames, coming off a spare in 4. And he's well off the mark there. He also pops out the 3-pin. Boorman, tough break for him there. Working on back-to-back strikes, right back on the middle, but the dreaded punch for Bill Boorman. Feel like you're throwing a good ball, and those breaks, the bad breaks, happen to the best bowlers. And some people will tell you they just they can tell that the ball didn't go right out of their hand, and that maybe they didn't deserve the strike. But obviously, you're hitting the middle. You're pretty close. You're where you want to be. Sometimes you just don't get that break. Bill Boorman, tough luck in 5. Those head pins too can, talking about the momentum earlier, they can really break up that momentum, because you know you're not going to be able to spare a head pin too often. But see if Boorman can bounce back in the 6th. Ken Wilson rolling right along here meanwhile. Another strike for Ken Wilson. That is 4 in a row. He's laying an early licking on Teddy Papadinitz. Papadinitz responds with a spare in 5. Pinfall so important, even if you're well behind in your match. Still important to get all your wood and get that score up as high as possible, because pinfall is what it really does come down to in this match play situation. Move to frame number 6, and Brad Ball is back on the board with another strike. His 3rd strike. Christy Wilson back in the middle, and a strike for her as well. Good match going on here between Christy Wilson and Brad Ball. Very tight match there. Christy at 135 through 5 frames. Brad just 1 pin higher, 136. Both bowlers have strikes in the 6th. Gain 1 point up for grabs for each individual match, and another 2 points for team total, so a total of 5 points available in each of these games. So strikes for Christy Wilson and Bob Wilson. Strikes for Brad Ball and Bill Boorman in the 6th frame. Papadinitz coming off a strike. And misses left here. Ken Wilson, meanwhile, working on four-bagger. Pretty much put this match to bed with another strike here. And there's that punch we were talking about. Tough break for Ken Wilson. 4 strikes in a row. Another good-looking ball there. He hasn't missed the middle yet. But a head pin for Ken Wilson. So that maybe gives Papadinets a little bit of hope. Needs a spare here, though. Won't get it. So still a very comfortable lead for Ken Wilson in Anchorage against Ted Papadinets. These two teams in the regular season were fairly evenly matched. Boorman team finished second among the 6 squads with 111 points. Team Wilson right behind them in third with 101.5 points. As far as team average, very close. The Boorman team with 223 average and the Wilsons with 219. So on paper, pretty close match. And right now it's advantage for the Wilson team, thanks in large part to Ken Wilson, who racked up 4 strikes in a row in frames 2 through 5. Wilson. Right corner standing in frame number 7. In what is a very tight match against Brad Ball. And Ball not happy with that delivery. He knew right out of his hand that it was off the mark. Wilson can't convert on her spare attempt. Brad Ball will also open in frame number 7. So the match between Christy Wilson and Brad Ball appears to be going right down to the wire. Ball will try to clean up. He is just 1 point ahead of Christy Wilson. And you can make that lead 3 after he picks up 2 pin. 179 to 176. Ball leading Christy Wilson through 7 frames. Just a 3-point spread. Big frame here for Bob Wilson. He coming off a strike in 6. Also in a pretty close match with Bill Boorman. Wilson missing to the right. Bill Boorman also working on a strike, and that one slips out of his hand. He punches the 3 out. He's a tough spare. Punch that 3. Bob Wilson, he pops out the 3 there with his second ball to frame. Come on. Bill Boorman, ball there and a nice attempt at the spare, but the right corner remains. So Bill Boorman has the lead on Bob Wilson. They finish up in frame number 7. Wilson counting just 8 points in the 7th. Bill Boorman will count 13, so a 26-point lead now for Bill Boorman in his match against Bob Wilson. 138 to 122, so it's a 16-point edge for Bill Boorman. Ken Wilson now trying to bounce back, and he does that after a tough luck punch in 6. Doesn't let that get him down with another strike in 7. Ken Wilson with 5 strikes in 7 frames. Papadinets punches a 3 with his first ball. And he's in a big hole against Ken Wilson. Nice spare though from Papadinets, the 3-pin spare. 109 his total through 6, spare in 7. You see the pinfall still pretty close, still anybody's game. Brad Ball with a strike in frame number 8, his 4th strike of the game. Wilson comes back with a strike of her own. This match continues to be the one to watch. Christy Wilson's done a nice job here against Brad Ball. Responding again to Ball's strike. Not being intimidated at all by Brad Ball, the highest average bowler during the regular season. Bob Wilson loses his balance a bit there and misses to the right. Boorman converts on his right spare attempt. Leading his match at the moment against Bob Wilson. Wilson looking for a spare of his own. He won't get it here. A second straight open frame for Bob Wilson. And Boorman will pad his lead a little bit more. Gets the 15. You see a slight edge right now in pinfall for Team Wilson. Papadinets, after a nice spare in frame 7, can't take advantage. Missing the mark again in frame 8. That is 3 straight misses for Ted Papadinets. Once again, though, converts on the spare. Ken Wilson with 5 strikes in 7 frames. And he fell off the mark here in frame number 8. That's the first time he's missed the middle in this game. Ken, another guy that is consistently on the middle, 76% during the regular season. Second behind Brad Ball in hit percentage. Ken having his troubles in frame 8 though. He's at 191 through 7. Puts him 62 ahead of Ted Papadinets, and Wilson will settle for 10 points in frame 8. Gives him 201. Still very much in control of his match against Papadinets. 2 frames to go. Christy Wilson off the mark in frame 9. Tough fight on her hands against Brad Ball, but she's staying with Mr. Ball, and Brad Ball working on a strike in 8. He also misses the mark in 9. These two have pretty much gone tit for tat in this opening game. Christy Wilson trying to rebound with a spare, and she's well off the mark there. So a chance for Brad Ball to take the lead heading to frame number 10. He picks up the spare there. So a definite advantage for Brad Ball. Gets that foundation heading to the final frame. Christy Wilson counts 13 in frame number 9. So 2-9 heading to the 10th.
Count Billy, go!
So it looks like Christy is on her way to reaching her regular season average anyway. 220 Christy's average. She's only 11 away from that mark at this point. Bob Wilson having his troubles here. That's the 3rd straight frame in which he's missed the ball. Billy Boorman with his 2nd head pin punch of the game. Wilson pops the head pin out there, so it'll be 3 straight open frames for Bob Wilson. But Billy Boorman also having his struggles. However, Boorman is all but wrapped this match up now, leading Bob Wilson 170 to 148 through 9 frames. So still a chance for Bob Wilson. Teddy Papadinitz and Ken Wilson now, the anchor bowlers for their respective teams in frame number 9. Papadinitz back in the middle, and a chop for him there. Gives him 154 through 8. Ken Wilson leaves the right corner standing in frame number 9. He knows he has his match in hand, just a matter of adding as much to that team total as he possibly can now. Ken Wilson has guaranteed himself of a point. Bennett's picking up the spare in 9. You see from his reaction there, even though he will not win his match, big points nonetheless on the board. That team total still very much up for grabs. Ken Wilson converts on his spare attempt. There you see it, 573 to 563. As we come down the home stretch. First of 2 games between Team Wilson and Team Boorman. 2nd semifinal, 2003 Major League 5-pin playoffs. Christy Wilson leaves the right corner pin standing in frame number 10. Brad Ball working on a spare. And a big strike for Brad Ball. The veteran comes through for his team. Big strike for Brad Ball in frame number 10. Christy's got to have the spare here. And she gets it. Nice job by Christy Wilson. Brad Ball finding his form now with a 2nd straight strike, and that'll close out the first match. Brad Ball will defeat Christy Wilson. punch for Christy there. So 229 total for Christy Wilson. Good game for her. It won't be good enough to beat Brad Ball. And Brad Ball with another strike. A perfect 10th frame for Brad Ball. 3 straight strikes and a 284 total. And just like that, Team Boorman has jumped out in front. Nervous times now for Bob Wilson. His team still a chance here. Good looking ball there from Bob Wilson, back on the middle. Billy Boorman with a strike there in frame 10. That is 4 straight strikes for Team Boorman. 3 of them coming from Brad Ball, and Bill Boorman with one of his own to lead off the 10th frame. Bob Wilson with the spare. These two teams will split the first 2 matches. Brad Ball defeats Christy Wilson. Actually, they'll both matches will go to the Bill Boorman team. Brad Ball defeats Christy Wilson, and Bill Boorman will defeat Bob Wilson. As we mentioned, Ken Wilson has already shown his team of a point. The Bill Boorman team well out in front now in pinfall, a 35-point cushion. So an opportunity for Team Boorman to take 4 of 5 points in game number 1. Wilson leads off the 10th frame with a strike. He's looked very good in this opening game. 6 strikes for Ken Wilson in the game, including that stretch of 4 in a row. Papa Minutes trying to pad his team's total. Off the mark there. Spare 9-174. Papa Minutes. Let's count in the 2 9 frames. Ken Wilson needs a strike here in 10. And he won't get it. He's on the middle, but a chop. He got his first strike. He needed another one there. Can't quite get it. And with that, the Boorman team has locked up 4 of a possible 5 points in the first game of this 2-game semifinal. Ken Wilson will win his match and get 1 point for his team, but that's all the Wilson team will get. Still another game to come, but Boorman team grabs a commanding 4 points to 1 lead. Ken Wilson with a final tally of 256. Bob Minutes with 187. 4-1. Team Boorman defeats Team Wilson.